This is the Absolute Business Mindset podcast, created and hosted by Mark Hayward. This podcast will interview entrepreneurs, business owners, and careerists. We will delve into their journey to success, key life milestones, and go deep into their area of expertise. This podcast will inspire and educate with great guests. Get ready to learn from others' successes and failures. Today we have Julian Roberts, who is an executive and leadership coach. Hello, Julian. How are you?
I'm well. Pleasure to be here, Mark.
Thank you so much for joining me today. So maybe just a little bit on COVID. We're back in lockdown in the UK. How's
Yay! That's a third time, isn't it? Let's keep going with this.
Exactly. How's it affected your business and sort of your home life?
My business has not been affected as yet. I think I got impacted in the first lockdown, where people, I guess, panicked, and rightly so. We all panicked in a sense. And I think sort of learning development budgets, got slashed. I work with organizations predominantly. I do individuals as well, but I usually go through an organization, and that's how I do my training and coaching. And that sort of got clamped. And I think the first 3 or 4 months of last year, it was obviously pretty tough. And then we sort of come out of that, and I've started to gain some momentum. My only concern probably at this point is the pipeline as people retrench a little bit. Although I think there's a little bit of a mindset of this is here to stay in the sense of the way we're working. So I think there's a bit more of a positive can-do mindset, I think, within businesses. But currently, I'm in a reasonable good place right now. I would like a bit more of a pipeline, yes. But hey ho, we're in those times.
Yeah, and corporates, do you have lists for corporates that you get on as a provider?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to, it's a mixture. I don't go into sort of massive organizations because they take bigger companies that have got a plethora of people. I am my owner of myself, as it were. So I have a number of organizations. I'm on their sort of books, and I work with them. And it may be, one client I'm doing a mixture of coaching some of the senior leaders. We're doing some psychometric testing, which I do as well. And then we may do some other businessy stuff, because obviously I've got a business background. So sometimes I bring in the business strategy piece, where I might work with an organization and spend some time how to help them navigate strategically in the next sort of 6, 12 months or whatever it may be. So it will vary, but my aim is to work and partner with an organization, get to know their ethos, their culture, their values, and then that can then help as I interact with individuals on a one-to-one or do some training in groups.
Okay, fantastic. All right, we'll come a lot more into the coaching side a little bit later, but let's go back to how I described the origin story. So you did a science degree at the University of Reading. Tell me why you chose a science degree. Was it an influence of your parents, or was it a fascination by you? And why did you not pursue it after your degree?
Good questions. Very good questions. I was good at science. I liked science, and in fact my degree is pathology. It's more specific, more specified, and the reason I did that degree was I was inspired to become a forensic scientist. This was all before the CSI stuff back in the 80s. I'm sort of going back quite a few years there. So I was inspired to become a forensic scientist. This course they worked with London Metropolitan Police and everything else. There's lots of stuff like that in terms of the forensic department. And that was what I wanted to do, right. Do a degree and then work with forensics, scene of crimes, everything else. Yeah. However, I realized that I didn't want to spend my life in a lab, and that was not very inspiring. But although I enjoyed the sciencey bit, but I then took an approach of wanting to get into the world of dealing with people. And I thought, well, do you know what? I've grown up, my family has been sort of in sales. So I decided to get into the world of sales and working for the pharmaceutical company, selling drugs on their behalf, using my degree in a context of I had to know knowledge about a disease area, but then also using the selling, using the people, being independent. And I already knew then I create like working on my own. I was a self-starter, I was proactive, I loved all that. So that it just fitted me well. And then I got into the whole career of the pharmaceutical company. And obviously science degrees works well with business anyway, in terms of the way you think and logic and everything else.
So your first job was a sales role, as you said, and what I've found in my conversations with business owners and often quite senior who own businesses themselves, sales is quite an important factor. Now, obviously, sales for an entrepreneur is their lifeblood. It's earning money. But what did you learn as a salesman in the pharmaceutical area that sort of has helped you think about business, think about your own coaching business? Did it give you resilience? Did it give you sort of strength to keep going?
Yeah, I think my sales background, I mean, it's all through my career up until 3 or 4 years ago, has enabled me to plan things, because obviously without any business, you've got to be able to plan, but also to think a bit bigger picture rather than getting caught up in the nitty gritty sometimes, and think of the bigger picture of trying to win business. It also enabled me to know that the value of any business in any context of sales is building relationships. And I set out, with all my, my new business was to create meaningful relationships with people, and not just about, building relationships so I can get some money out of them, but actually my approach, particularly when I was dealing within the sort of healthcare industry, was I'm here to help this pharmacist doctor understand more about this drug area, disease area, that then they can do informed decisions on the right drug. Now, that may be the drug I'm selling, and obviously there'll always be a bit of a influencing going on, but the ultimate aim was to try and help them. And I guess my learnings is the same now. I work with organizations to help them, thrive, help them grow, help them sort of build resilience, and help them develop their people. So that's the premise I always come in on, and that's my intent. And yes, by having that approach, and I win those conversations and those relationships, I will ultimately start to build some business. But my sales background has just helped me just to, keep that follow-up going on as well. Because I think often as entrepreneurs or small businesses, following up and making sure you're getting back to people on things is really important. And I learned that, in sales is really, honor your word. You're going to get back or provide some information, do that in that aspect. But ultimately, it's the people side of things, which is really important.
I totally agree. And I think relationships in business, especially outside of the corporate environment where you're kind of protected a little bit, that relationships are the biggest thing, are the most important thing, because people buy people.
Yeah.
They might buy a product or service, but actually you're buying from whoever's selling it to you.
Yeah.
You've got to buy into that relationship to make it work. You then pivoted into the food industry. I struggled to see pharmaceutical drugs onto, so you were at Kraft and Baxter's and stuff. What made you make that change?
I think I started to, within the there was constraints within pharmaceuticals and how you can go about building your business, and I was very, I believe I've got a very entrepreneurial spirit of trying to drive business and having the ability to have the impact to really drive it. Working in the food industry, I knew I could get hold of, a good products, was Heinz, Yoplait, and really drive those businesses forward, and far more than I felt I could do in the pharmaceuticals. So I, got headhunted for Heinz and got into the world of grocery, multiple, the Tesco's, Asda's of the world, and started to then really hone my skills, understanding, consumers who buy these products through to the customers, the buyers who actually put them on the shelves as such, and then the whole sort of marketing piece. And I started to really get an understanding, and it opened my eyes up, but also gave me that opportunity. I could take a product and launch it in Tesco, and with all the right, promotional insight and everything else that we put behind it, could really drive this product forward. and to see the impact of that and be part of that impact through that sort of opportunity.
So do you think you were always entrepreneurial?
I think I was, and that's the reason why I did struggle at Heinz. You'll see in my career, I've been twice at Heinz, and the reason is Heinz bought HP Foods, which is where I went to, and I came back with them. But I struggled in massive corporates, centralized corporates. And it's interesting, Johnson & Johnson, who are a massive American company, but interesting that their approach is that every business is decentralized.
Okay.
So they almost act like mini companies, part of an umbrella brand. And that's where I thrive best. So I've always had this entrepreneurial, go get it, think about, be more agile, different approaching. And so that's where I thrived the most in my organizations. I've worked with like HP Foods and actually Yoplait, until it got bought with General Mills as well.
So you ended up getting to, in Yoplait, you were commercial director. So you got to a senior position, and what were you looking after as the commercial director? Were you looking after particular products, or was it
a UK, basically the UK business, which was £200 million. We had about £50 million promotional budget to spend, and I was in charge of 25 staff, and in terms of driving the business forward and growing it, developing strategies with the business, and then liaising with the other businesses around the world in terms of making sure we were on brand as well as much as just driving it forward in the UK. So I had a great role. I loved it. The only reason I at that time left is they moved offices, which made my commute started to challenge, and so I moved opportunities out.
And you said when you moved to the food industry, it opened your eyes. What do you mean? You just said just a minute ago, it opened your eyes. What do you mean?
I suppose I got more exposed to things like, whether it's sort of marketing, consumer marketing, shopper marketing, all these various aspects, and understanding, supply chain operations, all that aspect as well. And then I got more involved in more of the financial stuff. And as I got more like my commercial director role, I got more involved in the financial piece as well, understanding P&Ls, understanding sort of balance sheets, and really started to get a grip. And I felt, and certainly Yoplait, even though it was a big business, it was very much a hands-on role, and it got me exposed to such facets that you wouldn't normally do in a bigger corporate.
So you had the whole picture, in essence.
Yes.
Or you saw the whole picture of the business.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. And then you left and to set up an executive coaching. And so why did you leave the comfort zone of a job, a career that you've had successful? Was it because you wanted, or was there were you made redundant? Did you leave your own volition? What was the leaving? And did you agonize about it, I suppose?
There was, I guess for a long time, I'd always thought about doing something on my own, but I never knew what it was. And it's always been there. And it's like these things you just don't know entirely sure. So there's two things that was the driver of me setting up my own sort of consultancy. One was my wife and I were just on the process of becoming looking to be a foster carers. So that was one aspect. So we wanted to create more flexibility and how we did that. Not that you can work full time as a foster care, but I just wanted to create a bit more of a support for that context. And the other things, I started to reflect, and it was in a company where it was, I say slightly toxic. It was very toxic and was causing challenges. And it made me reflect on my career and start to think, okay, what do I really like about what I do? And I started to look back, and yes, it was great getting the wins. Yes, it was great getting the new products in Tesco and, becoming a commercial director, all that sort of stuff. Great stuff. But the biggest, I suppose, thing I really found, and what excited me most, is when I had some individual who I would either spend some time in a one-to-one or do a bit of sort of coaching style leadership, and they go off and do something and change an impact that would be with them forever, and it was seeing their potential unlocked was more exciting and more energizing for me than just me getting a load of P&L of a load of grow sales through or great profit through. And so I started to think, okay, I really like this people thing, and I like unlocking people's potential. I like spending time. And then that was my launch pad into setting up my own company, which primarily at the start was more about working with businesses in terms of strategic, helping them strategically, and working with the owners and mentoring in that approach. And then I started to realize, actually, I want to get some training on this coaching side. I started to think, actually, I need a bit more about it. And therefore, I then trained as a coach and qualified as an ICF coach as well. And that's...
Sorry, so you actually did quite a lot of training, didn't you? You in the coaching arena, you did NLP as well, didn't you?
Yeah, so I did a master's sort of executive coaching training. I did the ILM level 7. I did an NLP.
So I recently interviewed Sue Knight from NLP.
Oh yes, that rings a bell. I'm trying to think where it rings a bell.
Yeah,
yes.
She's like renowned within the UK of corporate using NLP in business.
Yeah, so I use NLP as well, and so I wanted a bit of a blended approach. I'm also a DISC psychometrics or practitioner as well, so I do all that. And I'm currently studying for a master's in psychology. So not that I need that. It's just I've just got such a passion about behaviors and understanding that. And so I've decided to do that as well. And
busy.
Yeah, but it's a good way. When I became a coach, I realized that you need to invest in yourself and invest in continuous learning. And however you do that, you don't have to do a master's. There's different ways of doing it. And I always set out a plan each year of how I'm going to do that. And that one year was I'll do NLP. There's other things I can do. And this next 2 years is my master's. That's my focus. And it's really good because I already get insight to things that I've not known before because of my master's. And when I work with clients, I suddenly think, actually, this is why. And it helps me in those calls as well.
Okay, just before we go too much onto the training, I just want to ask you a very specific question because I agonized over leaving my corporate role to pursue my entrepreneurial future. What techniques did you use? What was the method? Because I think there's a group of people that listen to my podcast that either want to leave their corporate job or are thinking about leaving their corporate job. What techniques did you use when thinking through? Was it talking to your wife? Was it talking to friends? Was it pros and cons? I did all of the above. What made you come to that conclusion, and what techniques did you use thinking about it?
I think there was the reflection of realizing what I get passionate about,
right, and
what I get energized about, and what will get me out of bed. You could call it your purpose, you could call it your why. At that time, I probably didn't frame it in that way, but I realized that's what I wanted to do. And then the next step for me was then to, bounce that around with people, which was, close friends and my wife and everything else. Does that make sense? And then people that say, oh yeah, I can see that. And they suddenly say the obvious, really, that they've perhaps always been thinking. So that was my sense, my purpose. And then from that, I then started to, how does that play out going forward, and start to, and I would tell somebody now, almost visualize yourself out in 12 months. How does that play out? How do you think that would be? And that starts to make you think, well, that means I do this and do that. Because when you leave the corporates or even start a business, however you do it, you need something that will keep you going when it is really rubbish.
Yeah.
and that's whether it's your why, your purpose, your mission, however you want to frame it, you need to, because then you get to those points when it's not working or you're not getting the results you would like. You need to then go back to that and remind yourself and go, right, this is why I did this. It will take some time. And that's what I did. And I started to work through. So yeah, for me, it's, reflect, get clarity, bounce it around with people, but be careful who you talk to as well. Because, we do have people who are good friends of ours that can be negative or can be naysayers, or they can project their own sort of lack of courage to do something onto you, and they don't want you to do that step because that'll make them feel a bit uncomfortable. So there's going to be careful with that as well. But then
We all have them. We all have a friend in the pub who knows absolutely everything about it and has never done it before. So it's like the
exactly.
guy's got some properties, and when I started doing it, it's got a specific guy that I know is the sort of person that, oh, well, you need to do this, this, and this, and then you listen to them and you think, you don't know what you're talking about. And then, how many properties you? Oh, well, no, I'd never invest in property. It's just like, well, why have you got such a strong opinion about it? So I think we've all got a friend who is the sort of naysayer and sort of
Absolutely.
yeah, absolutely. What does emotional intelligence mean to you, and do you think people that you interact with are deficient in emotional intelligence?
Okay. I suppose emotional intelligence for me is when you are cognitive of your own, I guess, self-awareness, and whether that's the emotional side, your soft skills, but also cognitive of others. Because it's not just about the self-awareness piece, which people become incredibly self-aware, but it's more about knowing when you walk into a room or you have a conversation with somebody and you're aware in that moment the impact you're having or lack of impact or what sort of impact. And it's that being very aware. And it comes out of not just knowing yourself, but also being present as well. Because I think people get caught up with doing a psychometric on, EQ and all that sort of stuff. And they're all good stuff, but the better you become present, and I do like this in my coaching with my clients, but also I want to be fully present with them, because that is the best, to be fully present. And also when I'm fully present, I'm fully more aware of what's going on, what they're doing, what I'm doing, and realizing the impacts either way. So that to me is just taking it a bit further than just being self-aware. It's going beyond and being emotionally present with people.
Interesting. You mentioned earlier about fostering. So do you foster now?
We do, yes. We started what we now need 2 years ago.
And how has that affected your view on things and sort of your perspective?
It's probably made me more empathetic, and obviously along all sides of this, I've been doing my coaching training. You get very more reflective, and then you get a lot more aware and more observant of situations and people, what they say, why they're saying it. And not that you can second guess everybody, but you can always thread back to why they're reacting. And I guess for me, I've got a lot more awareness through it in terms of how people react, by seeing it in a more traumatized position. But it's also, often in life when we you might meet somebody at a garage and you give them your money to pay for your petrol. You might be really rude, and he was really rude, and we tend to point at that person immediately. We all do it, and then when we do something wrong with somebody, we're a bit cross or a bit grumpy. Oh, well, I've had such a bad day. I had this client and lost this, did this, whatever. So often when we refer to other people, we tend to point at them and go, oh, they're terrible. But actually, we don't realize there's something beyond that that's created why they're the way they are. And all they're doing is just trying to protect themselves, really. That's why they're responding. Mm. And I guess it's made me a lot more. Doesn't mean you tolerate things. You've still got to have boundaries, still got to have accountability, you've got a responsibility. But actually, the way people might react to you is because there's something else going on, and it's being more aware of that. And that's when you, as a leader, you would then start to ask them a few questions, and then you start to realize actually why they've reacted is because, I don't know, somebody's ill or something. It could be a personal thing, it could be a business thing, but it's trying to be more of that. It's just made me a lot more just standing back a little bit and observing people and what is really going on here.
That's fascinating. I think you're absolutely right. Most people, if they react badly, there's generally a reason behind it. They're not necessarily just being a difficult person. There's usually a reason behind it. So How do you think people have become? Do you think people have become more resilient with this climate of fear within COVID-19?
I mean, see, for me, resilience, it is that, that ability to overcome, isn't it? And, I do resilience training because I think it's a skill you can learn. It's not something, some people are more resilient than others. I think they are, but they're just employing the skill more. I think it has. And the reason I say it on two counts, firstly, the people I'm encountering are been faced with something they never had before. So they're having to be more resilient. They're having to be agile, having to think of new ways, new solutions to try and overcome, whether it's in their business or in their personal life. So I think it's created a more resilience. But also I did a survey in my company last year and a number of questions, but it was almost, I asked the question, are people being more resilient because of the fact that there's a more opportunity to be? And it was slightly tipped in the more positive, as in, yes, there's more, we feel we're more resilient than we have ever been before. So I think adversity, as much as we don't like it, it does create it. And it's that point of, we have a choice, don't we, to whether we go, oh, and we just fall over and just start to give up.
Yeah.
Or do we go, okay, right, let's see how we can get around this. And I think there's more of that opportunity. So I think it's making us more resilient. Although I know some people it is affecting massively, and I do feel for those people in terms of the sort of mental health as well.
Yes, I would agree. I think if people have been able to master their emotions on this, then I think a lot of people have become sort of more resilient, and you kind of think of the baby boomers who and people who went through the war, that they had adversity which built a strength. I think this will if people have not suffered, and I mean that with a lot of empathy, if people haven't suffered too much with this, then I think in the long term it will prove resilient for people to know that they got through it.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. What does strategy mean to you to be as a coach? So you're a leadership coach as well as an executive coach. How would you define strategy, and how does it impact your clients?
Okay, are you talking in a coaching context of
In a coaching context, yeah.
Okay, I mean, strategy is the how, really, isn't it? And if I'm working with a client, I had a client a few years ago. I did basically a 3-year strategy for them. And it was, I worked with the CEO and we looked at what do they want to achieve, as in what was their vision, what was their mission, so where were they, what was their focus, and then I just built back through engaging the rest of the business I suppose a strategic document, which was a strategy, and it's the how piece. How we go about this? How are we going to achieve 10 million sales? How are we going to achieve 1,000 distribution points in X? It's the how, it's the plan, and then you get mini sort of plans that come through that. So that to me is the strategy piece, and that's being strategic, and that's why there's a lot of planning involved in it. So that's how I would define it simplistically. And I think often people drop into the how bit before they know the what, and the what bit is the what you're after, and then you work back. And I think people often go off and start doing things slightly aimlessly, and so I think it's important to get the clarity of the what and when, and the timing points, and then you work
and also the why as well, that you start off with the why. Yes. In most cases you start in the why, don't you?
Yeah, and the why is the sort of the bigger picture, isn't it? Why we're doing this. Yeah.
Awesome. So you've got 2 podcasts, is that right?
I have, yes.
So as a follow podcaster, tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, so I started a podcast with Carey last year. We did a coaching one, started in January last year, and we wanted to raise the ante of what coaching was about, and we wanted to give some integrity to it, but also to show and showcase that people have done, qualifications like yourself, they've done some training, because as you all know, there's a lot of people on LinkedIn call themselves a coach, and I'm not sort of saying they can't coach people, but I guess some people need it because it's a self-regulated industry. I think people need some confidence that you've got something, you've done some discipline of, one-on-one coaching, you've been observed, somebody's sort of fed back to you, you're supervised, and there's a sense of accountability with it. And I think that's really important. And we wanted to do that. And so we started to invite coaches to tell their story. People like to hear stories. And it's been great. And everybody's got some form of coaching qualification experience. And I think we've done about 45 episodes. And yeah, it's been good fun. And I've learned loads, and it's been great. Met some great people along the way. And some great stories, people who've been rescued almost from the sea of almost dying. And then that was the prompt of them becoming a coach, and hearing these wonderful aha moments, and then just hearing different styles of coaching, different approaches, how they do things. So yeah.
What are your podcast called?
It's Coaching Conversations with Carey and Julian.
Fantastic.
And my other one is, I look in sort of post sort of lockdown, I started to get more into resilience with organizations. And I started to get this phrase of helping organizations thrive. That was my sort of phrase I started to talk. And then I thought, I could do something with this. And then I realized that it'd be great if I could just get to talk to other people and bring their expertise on. And I thought, okay, I could start a podcast. And so I started last August, and I get people who are in leadership, CEOs, HR leaders, some coaches, consultants, and they bring on that sense of resilience, sense of helping people basically thrive, so it's been good. And that one's a live one. I do a live LinkedIn, so it's slightly different.
Okay, right.
Slightly a bit more scary, although it's not as scary as it was in the early days.
Yeah.
And then I take that into an audio and put on a podcast. But no, that's been brilliant. And again, I've been talking to people all around the world, and sort of HR directors of Dulux Paint in Australia through to people in Canada and everything else. So yeah, it's been brilliant. So, yeah,
it's amazing, isn't it? The number of people that you speak to and their experiences just add so much value. I find it absolutely fascinating speaking to people and hearing people's stories and what's inspired them. And there's always a nugget that I get very selfishly. It's my podcast, very selfishly from speaking to whoever I'm speaking to. So
I totally agree. Every time I have a conversation, I go, I learned something new today, or that made me really think, or change my mind or view on something, and I'm going to explore a bit more about that. So it's selfishly, it's a wonderful. I have this one-on-one like yourself with people,
yes.
And you're thinking, I'm not being paid for that. They're not paying me. I'm not paying for it. And they're giving me some value, and I'm loving it. Who cares if my listeners are again? I'm getting loads out of this. So yes, that's great.
Exactly. So from a coaching point of view, we've talked about specifically the more psychological side. We talked about the emotional intelligence and thinking about strategy. So from a coaching point of view, how do you generate your leads? What's your sort of package of generating leads as for other coaches that are listening?
Okay, yes, that never-ending
it's always a problem, isn't it? Yeah,
it is always a problem. And I'm sure lead generation people will be out there ready to fire away their little emails that I get dozens of each day, who've got the best secret sauce and how
of course
to get those £10,000 leads 3 times a week. Anyway, besides all that, me complaining and ranting about that, I guess for me, I use LinkedIn massively, and I've gathered a reasonable following on there, and I believe I'm making some impact. Who knows? Sometimes you never know exactly. And that has generated stuff from people who then get to know you through, whether it's through videos, podcasts, whatever you do. And so I've managed to start getting a flow of, I'm not saying hundreds, but it's a flow of conversations that come from that. And that's really helped. And I use LinkedIn in terms of, the messenger side as well. So I will use a virtual assistant or help me to do that and to get to the target using Sales Navigator. And that that is quite effective in various ways, whether it's promoting something like a podcast or just creating some engagement. I don't do hard sell stuff. It's more about gaining engagement, demonstrating some credibility, and building that relationship. And that's how I approach it. And things start to flow from that.
And that's a long-term strategy.
It is. It is. Obviously, there is podcasting itself, just by the nature of relationships you get through it, and the connections and the referrals, is my other strategy. And obviously, I use my whole email sort of lists, which I keep, again, furnishing people with information. And I don't cold call. I don't. It's all about building relationships, getting to know people. And then you get referrers, you get into an organization, they refer you, or somebody moves on and they go to a different business, and therefore you're getting there. So that's broadly how I do it. I'm not saying I've got probably the best funnel sales process in that sense, but I'm trying to create something that's sustainable. And I'm not after the sort of quick buck at all. I'm after something that'll be long lasting. Hence, organizations, I'm not after going for just the one person to do a career coaching, which is what some people do, which is fine. I'm after an organization who are going to be paying thousands of pounds with me. So, and that's where I'll invest, and it's more of a partnership in that sense.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Did I read that you're a member of the Institute of Directors?
Yes.
So how did that come about?
Oh, you just pay for that, don't it? It's nothing special.
Oh, it's not. It's not.
No, don't worry. Yeah, I might look special, but it's clearly not that at all. No, it's just you just pay for a membership. That's really good. You get a lot of insights there and a lot of opportunities. I think it was probably more in the non-COVID days when you could go to networking events as well.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. So, why do you think, this is a little bit of a random question, but it's more conceptual than some of the stuff we've talked about, than tactical. Why do you think somebody might need a coach? And that is a very broad question, but it's deliberately for someone to come to you that needs you as a coach. What sort of scenario is sort of your thought on where someone would need you to come in as a coach?
I think it's often with individuals. If you look at more individuals who come to me, my target is organizations and then individuals out of that. But the individuals who pay themselves often is, and I got an example recently. I had a client who knew what he wanted. He wanted to grow his business by X. He wanted to do this, all these things, but he just felt a little bit stuck in the how, and I think and also a little bit unclear. So often people come to me who they've just got a bit sort of, it's a bit muddled, and they've got like 5 or 6 things going on, and they're just not entirely sure, and then they almost feel like they should do everything. And then I often help them provide real clarity with the way forward, or what's right. And again, that borns out of getting really down to the sort of the purpose as well, which really gives you a lot of clarity for what's next. And then the other thing is, so people get stuck, but often they get stuck because, they often procrastinate. And sometimes the reason why they're procrastinating is because they've got limiting beliefs. Effectively, they lack confidence in their whatever it is. And that's another thing. People will come and they go, and I will help them reframe that, or whatever it may be, to help them overcome that limiting belief and give them that confidence to, yes, I can get to the top of that mountain. I haven't got there yet, I'm here now, but I believe I can get there. And it's that sense, because often people go, I want to get to the top of the mountain, and they don't really say this. It's only through the call that ends up it's a belief thing, and that's what they struggle with. So that's sort of the personal side of things. So I end up, sort of my little things is about gaining clarity, overcoming limiting beliefs, and then really increasing your self-awareness as well, which through the whole process of coaching vastly increases your self-awareness.
How do you give people clarity in their vision?
I do. There's a number of ways I can do this. I don't tell them clearly. A coach is not about telling people. A coach is about getting them to get the realization. So I may use a technique of visualizing, which takes them out a number of years, months, whatever it may be, and engage all their senses in terms of what they see, hear, feel, that sort of thing. And that can start to create some stuff. But what I use a technique in NLP, which is logical levels, and it's about ultimately getting back to your mission, your purpose. Because once you get that, then you get clarity on everything else. And it's a technique where they physically move around the world, and it's got a bit more difficult to do on Zoom, but I have done it on Zoom. And you start in your environment. You look at skills and behavior. You look at sort of values and beliefs, which is where people normally stop, values and belief. And then this goes down to identity, and then through to mission or purpose. And by getting to that point, they get clarity on everything else as they come back out of this process. So that's one of the ways I do it. And just other ways that might just be questioning and just some open questions of listening to them as well. We'll get that clarity.
Okay. Thank you very much. We're coming to the end of the podcast. I've got 6 questions that I ask. They're quick fire questions. They don't need a quick fire answer.
It's okay.
One.
Not competition, is it? Don't win any points or a prize?
No prizes.
Oh, no.
You came a year too early. Maybe in a year's time we can do prizes. Right. So first one is, what's the best decision that you made?
Leaving the corporate world.
Agreed. 100% agree with that. What's the best piece of advice you've been given?
Sleep on it.
Interesting. Okay. Who's helped you most in your career?
I'd say
my
wife.
Give a shout out to a couple of people if you want.
Well, no, my wife, in terms of putting up with all my woes and everything else, and I've got this idea, and just sometimes listening to me and letting me witter on.
Do you have any regrets?
Not now. No, I think. Yeah, no, I don't know. I don't think I've got. All what I've done is all valuable for now. So no regrets.
Okay, great. What are you most proud of?
I'd say my 4 children, and the fact that my eldest is now studying in Canada to be a nurse. My next one's studying at Cardiff, neuroscience. My next one's doing college, animal management, and my 12-year-old, she's doing fantastic in homeschooling. Really good.
So they're all science-based, so they'll all be salesmen, will they?
Probably. In fact, my eldest will make a very good saleswoman, I tell you.
And the last question, what does legacy mean to you?
Legacy. I guess leaving an impact. Yeah, leaving an impact.
Okay, fantastic. And the last one is a nice, easy one. Where can people find you if they want to reach out to you?
You get either on LinkedIn, I live there quite a few hours of the day, or my website, which is julienrobertsconsulting.com.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Julian. It's been really interesting. We've gone deep into coaching, and it's been really fascinating. I'm sure a lot of my audience will really enjoy that. So thank you very much, Julian.
No, thank you for having me, Mark. It's been great.
Thank you. Cheers.